All right. Can everyone hear me? Good. All right. Well, my name's Sam Richardson. I work for Howard County Recreation Parks, and among one of my duties is running the deer management program for the county. Ryan Butler was nice enough to go first, and a lot of this is going to be overlap from what he said because our programs are pretty similar. But just to start off, I'll give a little overview of some particulars of Howard County. So we're about half the size of Montgomery County, fairly populated, around 300,000 people, but the majority of that population is on the eastern portion, Columbia, Ellicott City area. So it's fairly densely populated. Like many places in Maryland, and as we've talked about today, there are a high rate of vehicle collisions. Since 1998, we've been recording collisions as reported by county highways, and physically what they've pulled off the road, and it's at around 14,000 up to this month, actually. So normally when you hit a deer, it doesn't always stay around, right? Usually they run off. So you could probably easily understand that that's a much higher number. So 14,000 deer, we've talked about the cost estimates of collision damage, such as that. So it's a big problem, especially in these densely populated areas. And then also the other issues are landscaping, any crop damage that would be in the area. We typically do surveys with a helicopter nighttime infrared flights, and in that we can get a single-time snapshot of population of deer within certain areas. We try and tend to survey the areas that we have management efforts on so we can see between year what the population is. And some of these areas, we have one park that's a half square mile, and in a single time snapshot on one night in the winter, there can be as many as 90 deer. So it's pretty dense. That'll vary. As I said, Howard County in the eastern portion is pretty dense. The western portion of Howard County tends to be more rural, a lot of agriculture. People actually still own land out there, and they tend to have their own private hunting. And the numbers for the parks, the few parks that are in the western portion of Howard County, those numbers tend to be lower for their single-time snapshots. The problem that we face, and everyone in this room faces, is how do you deal with the deer? How do you deal with deer management, especially in these densely populated areas? So a lot of these population centers, there's very limited hunter access, except on private land. And even then, in suburbia, urban areas, there's not any real private land that you're going to be able to hunt or someone can go on and hunt. So we get a lot of requests. I probably get 1 or 2 phone calls a week of, hey, there's a lot of deer in my backyard. They're eating all my plants. What do I do? And more often than not, they don't like the answer I give them because it's simply, where do you live? No, sorry, can't do anything. We tend to, we perform deer management on county-owned property. So the 2 programs that we have that I'll get into have to take place on county property. And a lot of these people live in areas like Columbia and Ellicott City. They don't even have a quarter-acre lot. It's very small, and even with state regulations, they wouldn't be able to do anything privately anyway. So I do get a lot of phone calls for that. I get a lot of phone calls asking, is it possible for your sharpshooters to sit on our deck and do something? No, for a lot of reasons. A lot of calls are related to the contraceptives or surgical sterilization. I got a call about a month ago asking, is there any way you could catch all the bucks in this park and surgically sterilize them? No, for a lot of reasons. And it's not necessarily, people just don't know what they don't know. So it's a good opportunity to inform them of it. But I can tell them what we can do as the county with Rec and Park through our 2 management programs. And both of them are lethal deer management. And one is a managed hunt program, and one is a sharpshoot program. Now, there's only certain properties we can do these on. In Howard County, our largest park is around 1,200 acres, and there's people that think, wow, you'll get lost in there, it's so big, but we all know it's probably not very big. The smaller ones, that we can do something on are 60 acres maybe, but after that they tend to decrease and limit what we're allowed to do any deer management on. So when I get these phone calls of someone asking about deer management, the first thing I do is I look up, is it a county-owned property? If it's not, then we're really limited. I can recommend some of the strategies we've already talked about, including fencing, things you can put on landscaping and plants, but when they realize they have to foot the bill for that, not the county or state government, then they kind of aren't too keen on it, and it kind of conversations go downhill from there usually. So we determine the properties based on citizen complaints. If the county owns it, we go out and we'll talk to park staff if there's any observable browse damage. Historically, talk to people who have been there over a number of years, get a feel for the landscape out there. We have a forestry section within our department as well, and they'll go out and check out the property as well. We then generally look to see in our complaint logs if we've gotten complaints from people around these properties. That definitely helps with public support. And then we also check if we have people who are very against deer management, lethal deer management in the area, because that will quickly, they'll quickly start contacting a lot of politicians in the county and county government. The suitability of the property itself in terms of safety, is it large enough? Are there good backdrops for hunting or sharpshooting? Safety in general. And is it conducive to managed hunts or sharpshooting? So, as I said, there's two different setups for the program. So we have a managed hunt program and a sharpshooting program. Now the managed hunts are very similar to what a lot of other counties do. It's shotgun, muzzleloader, archery. Certain parks are only archery, some are mixed, some are only shotgun. Again, it depends on the size, because when the largest park is only 11 to 1,200 acres, it definitely limits what you can do. And with the archery, there's the public perception of that goes two ways. A lot of people approve more of it because it's quiet, it's less intrusive to the public, they're not hearing it. And a lot of people feel, okay, maybe it's a little more violent and they'd rather, a firearm. It's a typical lottery-based system that we have. We have a roster, it stays around 140 hunters, and they apply to the program. I know Montgomery County is the same way. It's a lot of background checks, applications. You have to interview them, so you make sure they're good, ethical hunters. They have all the appropriate licenses, hunter education cards, and in this program, they're allowed to do what they want with the venison they harvest. They can donate it, they can consume it themselves. They're responsible for checking it. That being said, it's a program with 140 hunters, but they can only hunt on certain days. So we set the days they can hunt, we set the parks they can hunt on what days, and we set the locations they're going to be in. So it's very highly detail-oriented. I need to know specifically where they're going to be, what tree they're going to be. They have to be in an elevated position, and we go out and we GPS every tree so we know exactly where they are. And that's, again, safety concerns for staff, the public, everyone in general, including the hunters. Now, our other program is the Sharpshooter Program, and that is run primarily by county staff. We do have some volunteers that help out with field dressing the deer, but it's county staff run. Usually it's primarily the park rangers doing a lot of the deer harvesting. We try and use it in areas that aren't conducive to managed hunts. So there's some properties, the county ends up with a lot of open space areas that aren't going to be parks. Whenever there's a development that goes in and there's a stream or a swamp or somewhere they can't develop, that's where all the deer tend to go when they finish eating in everyone's yards, and then they go and hide in the woods. So those are the parks or the properties that we can access more of the sharpshooting. And some of these are very small areas where it's better to have highly trained people go in and at an elevated position, try and maintain the population. I know I've been up in some of these tree stands on these properties, and you have a small window where you're allowed to shoot due to state regulations, safety zones, safety for the public. And these all take place at night, and we do use baiting to draw the deer in. Now, this does require a higher amount of training, and because of that, and because it's all staff, cost goes up compared to the managed hunts. So you do need staff on location and setting up for the managed hunts, but it's definitely more, I guess, cost effective because you have, I have 140 hunters who are more than willing to go out there. We have very liberal bag limits, so it's a good option. But in Howard County, the primary issue is, again, size of property. So a lot of places we just can't do managed hunts, so we kind of have to have a dual program with 2 different methods. And even then, we have maybe 20 properties we can do any form of management on. And as I said, I get a lot of calls constantly for people asking for more management. In terms of getting the program to be approved in the county government at that level, it is a very political thing. You definitely need to get the local politicians on board, the county government, get ahead of that before you even start talking about getting it approved, because they're going to be the ones getting the calls when people are upset about it or want more of it. So it's definitely good to include them. So, yep, 2 different methods. In the off season, my primary thing is setting up for the next season, educating the public, finding, as Ryan was saying, finding new methods to survey. We have historically used a helicopter, but we are looking into drones as well. So it's challenging as the county develops more and more, and it's harder to find properties, but we're kind of having to adapt with the times.